Today I'm going to give you 6 tips to land more interviews when you're applying for a job right after this. For reference, these 6 tips and some bonus tips at the end come from my experience recently with Indeed.com and hiring. From the last video, you don't need to see that. You guys don't need to see my book. You can get your own free copy at one of the links down in the description. But, man, that sounds so forced. That was not planned at all, but it sure comes across as like forced, like secret marketing, whatever. Anyway, so I recently hired a new executive assistant. And I went to Indeed.com, posted my job description. I got like 160, 170 applications. Of those, maybe 30 completed everything I needed them to. Of those, I think 7 got a phone interview. And 7 signed up for a phone interview. 5 showed up for a phone interview. And 2 of them, 3 got an invite to an in-person interview. And one of them, I don't know what happened. She just didn't, it is what it is, didn't show. So I actually never heard from her again. I got like a text saying something with phone, I don't know. Whatever, it seemed like BS, and then just ghosted. And then 2 of them, we actually drug through the entire interview process and hired one. They were both really solid, but I went with one. Air Force veteran, actually, so that's good. But there were some things that I noticed, things that really stood out to me about resumes, and I wanted to just throw those out here, but the most important stuff is going to be towards the bottom, towards the end, especially the bonus tips, because I'll tell you, of the 160 plus applications that I received, the reason only 30 of them were even close, and the reason only like less than 10 of them, so like almost like there were like 5% of them that got actual phone interview, is because of failing to do the last few things. So I'll explain that right now. I don't know all the numbers. So number 1 here, right? Attention to detail. So, and I'm just gonna read my notes. You can just deal with it. A resume is a PDF. It's bragging about yourself. If you're not capable of getting those details right, how can I assume that you're gonna get any other details right? So if you don't know, what date you quit somewhere and what date you started somewhere and like when your job's aligned, find out. If you don't know, like if you can't tell me where you went to school or like anything, like if you miss your name on the resume, or like you don't have a contact info or references, like any of the normal stuff. References don't always go on the resume, but if you're missing key details, I'm gonna just assume that your attention to detail sucks, and I don't want an employee who can't pay attention to details. You need to be good at your job. And so if I'm trusting you to run like a Facebook community with 63,000 people in it and approve the proper people into the group so we don't get a bunch of spammers, then I'm going to want to make sure you actually remember those criteria rather than submitting or accepting a whole bunch of BS. So number 2, chronological order of things, right? So put the most recent thing at the top and then work back. I shouldn't see a job ending in 2017 and then wonder why you haven't worked a job in 6 years, only to find that your current job is the 4th or 5th or 6th on a list of 6 jobs. So this actually happened. I had a resume come in. Number 2017 was the first job. They were all out of order. The 4th job of 6 listed was the current job. So I looked at this thing and my first thought was, this person hasn't had a job in 6 years. Why? Were they like stay-at-home mom? Like, no issue with that. There's a lot of very legitimate reasons why that might be true. But if it's literally just sitting in my mom's basement playing video games, eating cheese puffs because I didn't want to work, like, I don't want that person as an employee. Sorry. So I want to know, like, immediately, I'm like, why were they not employed? And then I find out, like, oh, they just suck at organizing. Also, no detail. Flag, red flag, woo! So just put them in proper order. Your most recent or current job should be top, and then work backwards. So present, ended in 2020, ended in 2018, ended in 2015. You get the idea. Number 3, if I ask you for 3 references and you give me 2 references, like, unless there's legit story, like you fresh out of the pen and you're homeless, or like you've got some like crazy reason to be getting back on your feet, my assumption, if you can't provide a 3rd resume, is that you burn way too many bridges, and that's just not the type of person I want in my culture. All right, so provide 3 references, and don't just be like my mom, my dad, my significant other, right? Legitimate references, former employers, former employees that worked underneath you, managers, college professors, like ideally people who played a role as like a mentor or a mentee with you who can give some real genuine insight to who you are. Bonus points if it's somebody who's gonna shoot me straight, right? So like my most recent one, she gave me 3. One of them was her significant other, but they had a work capacity beforehand, so I talked to them about that part. And then 2 different people that she'd either worked with or, you know, for a long time. But what I really wanted, because she was in the Air Force, I wanted a legitimate, you know, reference from somebody who also was in the Air Force, right? So I asked her for, hey, do you have like any of your bosses, like your former colonels that you worked with? Because she'd worked with some, she had some billets where she directly reported to 06s. So I asked if she had one of those she could introduce me to. And then I asked if she had one of her junior airmen, like somebody who worked under her charge, to introduce me to. And she introduced me to both in the same day. The colonel, anyone who knows anything about the military, right? That colonel's going to shoot me straight. Even if he loved her as a person and like owes her a favor, he's going to be honest, right? At least I'd like to think so. Colonels are straight shooters. And the other guy was a junior Marine, junior airman, who had served under her and hadn't talked to her in like 2 years. So like both of those are going to be solid, you know, references. I want to know how her bosses thought of her, and I want to know how her subordinates thought of her. And everyone said the same thing. It was great. Now, if you have a noticeable work gap, right? Like at the bottom somewhere, write a brief 1 or 2 sentence explanation as to why on your cover letter. So you put a cover letter there when you submit it. Put some bullets about like things to note about your resume. So like according to this, right? So one of the things I said, like, you know that potential employer is going to try to notice it, or is going to notice this and ask about it. Nobody's going to fault you for taking time off to travel the world, or having kids, or caring about for a sick spouse, or something, like taking a work break for a legitimate reason like that, where you're just, hey, like, this is not my phase of life. You know, or maybe you're changing jobs to take a bigger and better role or opportunity, like, put that on there. If that's the case, say it up front. Show that you understand why the game is played the way that it is, and, you know, that's what professionals do. So the assistant principal who applied for my executive assistant job did this, and it was awesome. Her resume was the best resume I saw. She actually didn't get an interview, and I'll explain why. It wasn't because she was overqualified, though she probably was. But I'll explain why she did not get an interview here in a minute. But her resume was the best resume that I saw. And one of the things it did was on the cover letter, it said, hey, I know I've got a bunch of work, you know, changes here, and like I changed jobs like 4 times and whatever. Each one was for a higher position. Okay, you're moving up the chain. I get it. Or, hey, there's a work gap here. I had twins and took 2 years off to be a mom. Okay, got it. Like, just put it there so I don't have to ask those questions, you know, because it's like spidey senses, right? It's like, oh, why is there a bunch of gaps? Or why is she, like, has she been getting fired? Like, why is she changing jobs all the time? Just put it out there front and center to get a better response rate. All right, if you have additional assessments, what is this, number 5? If you have additional assessments and or aptitude personality tests, go ahead and put them in your resume to bolster it up. You can even hyperlink PDFs. So like, you put in the PDF for your resume like a hyperlink to your test results. So if that's the DISC profile or the culture index, or, you know, a test showing that you've got great scores in whatever, or like, I don't know, whatever aptitude tests, whatever things, awards, accolades, like, brag on yourself. If you've got things that speak to this job, now don't just fill it full of crap that has nothing to do with anything. Tailor it to the job you're applying for. And like, hey, I'm going to be an executive assistant. Hey, look, I've got this certification in Excel. I took this typing test, and this is my words per minute. I've got, you know, like, whatever those things are, and just link to them. Like, hey, that's bonus points for sure. If I'm like, oh, wow, look at all this crap that they went out of their way to do. I think that's huge. Let's see. All right, number 6 here, photos. Now, this is not necessary, and it may or may not help you, right? It is what it is. If you're gonna use a photo, make sure it's a net positive. Get a good headshot taken, a quality headshot taken, or at least choose a professional looking photo of you. The higher resolution, the better, so it doesn't look fuzzy. Like, if you're gonna use a picture of yourself and you look like you're just like grotesquely out of shape, you haven't, your hair's all a mess, your makeup's like melting off your face if you're a girl, or if you're a guy, you're just totally disheveled, like, just don't use a photo. Like, if that's not who you are now, like, don't use it. Just, like, use an accurate photo that represents yourself, and use a professional photo, or don't use a photo at all. Like, use something that looks good. Make sure it's a net positive. Ask some friends, like, is this a good photo? Like, if you had to judge off just this one photo whether I was a decent person or not, what would your answer be? If the answer is not a resounding fuck yeah, use that picture, you look like a stud muffin, don't use the photo. So you don't have to put a photo on your resume, but it can be a net positive if you choose a good photo, right? Like, oh, wow, look at this person. They look clean cut. They look professional. They look awesome. You know, people, whether you like it or not, and you might get offended about all this, but whether you like it or not, people make snap judgments visually and all sorts of other reasons. I do it. You do it. If you don't think you do it, you're lying to yourself. It is what it is. But again, you know, first impressions matter. Make a good one. Okay, here's the bonus ones. Bonus. And this is actually why the assistant principal did not get hired, okay? Now, I'll drop to the bottom one of these. So the bottom one of these, this is not why she didn't get hired, or even an interview. Just, in fact, she did this. Throw some hobbies in there, maybe 3 to 5 small icons with a title across the bottom of the page that's like, about me, hobbies, and just like 5 pictures that are like little, like, you know, almost like social media icon type thing, like just a, like, hobbies, and it's like triathlon, you know, swimming, I don't know, crochet, I have no idea, right? But like that, you know, it doesn't have to be like crazy paragraph, but just like a quick little snippet at the bottom. It's not something that you have to do, but it's something to tell me a little bit about who you are as a person. And assuming you have a personality, right, which is a big assumption these days, I think, but assuming that you have a personality, this is going to be a benefit to you, right? Because it shows that you have a personality, and it shows that you know how to do things, and that you like doing things, and that whatever. And so that's going to be a net positive, right? Now, if the only thing you've got is like, I play World of Warcraft in my mom's basement while stuffing my face with Cheetos 24/7, maybe just don't put that part on there, right? Not that there's anything wrong with being a gamer, but like, you want some hobbies that, like, if you've got hobbies that like portray that you have interests or whatever, like, just showcase who you are, and just try to make it not seem like you're a total loser. Again, not to say that World of Warcraft makes you a loser. I think the living in your mom's basement stuck in Cheetos 24/7 and not trying to work makes you the total loser. Again, also nothing wrong with living with your mom, like, whatever, house hack, great, but like, have some, you know, drive. Anyway. All right, bonus tips and tricks. These 2 are why the assistant principal didn't get an interview, even though she was the best resume. Number 1, read the job description fully. And number 2, complete the application fully. That's it. So let me tell you how this works from an employer's side. I put together on Indeed a job description with what I'm looking for. Indeed has some basic qualification things that you can use to, like, weed people out. At the very bottom, not even at the very bottom, like 3/4 of the way to the bottom, I had 3 bullet points, essentially. In fact, wait, 1. Okay, so for reference, this thing is 1,007 words, right? So on page 4, I had top of page 4 of a 4-page document. Right at just past 3/4 of the way through this thing, it says in bold font, how to apply. There are 3 bullets. 1, fill out the qualification form with a link to a Google Drive that's off Indeed. Number 2, submit your resume and 3 references via email to this email address, which, by the way, was a different email address than what is tied to Indeed. So if they just tried to message me through Indeed, wrong. Attention to detail, right? Number 3, submit your DISC test results via email as well, so same email, and then a link to DISC profile test. Now, if you're not familiar with the DISC, it's basically, it has 4 things, DISC, drive, influence, stability, and control, I think. Anyway, so it's a personality test. It's super simple. Tony Robbins loves it. And it's really helpful to employers, right? Every employer should have like some kind of a culture and or personality test. So 3 questions, 3 things. Fill out this Google form, email your resume and references to this separate email address, and also email in your test results. So that shows me, A, you took the test, B, you have attention to detail, and C, ta-da. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed one. The subject, and this one's not showing it for some reason, but the subject for that email for this position was supposed to say badass EA applicant. That was the subject. And so it said, submit it with the subject line of, quote, badass EA applicant. So I want to see attention to detail. Did you use the subject? Did you fill out the Google form? Did you submit all 3 things to this right email? Really not hard. But what this did for me was it took 160 plus people on Indeed, who might have been qualified, whatever, who didn't take the time to actually read the full job description and or even scroll to find the place that says how to apply, and then read and do exactly what that says, because I didn't care about the Indeed applications at all. Did not care. Could not have cared less. I cared about, was this person willing to problem solve, right? So I didn't give them super specific skills and or instructions, and willing to pay attention to detail. Sometimes I even do one where I say, hey, send a video to me at this email, and horizontal video. And I don't give any instructions about editing it, how to upload it, whatever. I want to see if they can work through all of that and make it happen. This saved me so much time. Can you imagine if I had to interview 160 people? Or even like half of them, 80 people? No way. I would never make it through that. I would freaking quit halfway through. So if you're gonna do the whole resume thing and look for interviews, actually take the time to fill everything out completely and submit everything completely. So I mentioned at the beginning there were like 25, 30 people who filled out almost everything and still didn't get an interview. The reason for that is that they did almost everything, but the email subject was wrong. I had a ton of people who it was like executive assistant application, or executive assistant, or job position, or hire me, or whatever. Only the 7, no, sorry, there was an 8th, but he didn't fill out the Google form. So there was an 8th person who didn't fill that out, but only those 8 people put badass EA applicant. Now, why did I do that? 2 reasons. 1, attention to detail. We already covered that. 2, culture fit. So this assistant principal that I had messaged on Indeed, I actually replied to her because I liked her stuff so much and was like, hey, please make sure that you fill out the rest of the application completely. And she did everything, but the subject on her email showed me right then and there, culturally not a good fit. She wasn't comfortable using the word badass in a subject line on an email. And for me, if you're not comfortable doing that, you're not going to fit the company culture, right? Now, every company's got their own thing, but that's what this is. It is a company culture weed out. I want to make sure that the people I'm hiring match my culture. It's the same reason that on one application I did in the past, interview or job description, I posted a video where I'm drinking a scotch out of a, Glencairn and I'm drinking a scotch, maybe even smoking a cigar. There's a firearm hanging out in the background because that's kind of the company culture, right? Service members and vets, we're snarky, we're blunt, we're whatever. And if all of that stuff, if any of that stuff scares you off and you're like, oh, I can't work with anyone who likes Second Amendment, okay, that is totally fine. Nothing wrong with that, but I don't want you to waste my time by applying. Just move on. Great. So that weeds people out. So just know that you want to submit a complete good picture, but then you also want to be able to just showcase the attention to detail, the problem solving, and be a good culture fit. That's what we're going for. So I hope this helped. This is how you can get more job interviews. It really doesn't boil down to just the resume. Anybody can lie on a resume. It's the details and the follow-up, right? If someone had messed some of that stuff up and followed up with me aggressively, I would have still interviewed them, but no one did. So really show that persistence, right? By the time I interviewed those 2 people, they were a culture fit. They were rock stars. They had great references. It was actually very difficult to pick. And the only reason I went with the one I did is because that person was a little bit more admin oriented and the other person was more customer service oriented, and I needed more of the admin role than the customer service role at this time. Had it been the other way around, I probably would have hired the other person. They were both awesome. Hope this helps. Make sure you subscribe, comment, whatever, if you got something out of it. Thanks for watching. You've made it to the end of the video. If you got something valuable out of this, please consider smashing that like button, subscribing to the channel, and checking the little bell for notifications so that you get to see more valuable content. Depending on what you're interested in, we've got a ton of other playlists on real estate investing, military advice, getting rich in the military, VA loans, you name it. And make sure you get plugged in the community, in the Facebook group, and other platforms. Also, if you haven't done so yet and you've still got a lot of questions, especially if you're a younger service member, check out the No BS Guide to Military Life. This is everything I wish I'd known when I first joined the military, and I wrote it to pass on so that other people don't have to say, God, I wish someone had told me that when I was younger. So hope you got something out of this. If you got ideas for other videos or questions, throw them in the comments. I definitely do reply to most everything that's in my comments. And I look forward to seeing you around the channel again. Have a great day.